Hi, I'm Premjish Achari. I'm the curator of Kaee Kolkata City Lab. And this is the exhibition that that you see here. It's a result of a one-year-long project with residencies that extended to 1 month each for the different KKCL fellows that came and who participated in the residency. The intention of the residency was to engage with the city of Kolkata and also to engage with what contemporary art can do to urban spaces, city spaces, and especially to urbanism, which is a developing phenomena of our times. That what kind of spaces or what kind of places we want to inhabit, how it affects our lived experiences, and what are the histories of these places, what are the memories of these places, how people articulate, how people imagine, and how people's lives are shaped by these events in the history, but also architecturally, how it affects the mobility, the movement, and also the lives of the individuals in the city. So one important area for all of us to engage was the public sphere. The public sphere, not only in the sense of a public space, but public sphere as an intellectual domain that informs public opinion, that forms discourses on the city, its history, its politics, its social life, its cultural fabric. And it also shapes what kind of public spaces we want, what kind of cultural spaces we want to inhabit, what kind of monuments we want to cherish, what kind of monuments we want to designate for the city. So how do we make sense of that, and how do we also intervene in that? What is a right to the city? So we are the citizens of the city itself, or the word citizen itself comes from its connection to city, that you belong to the city. But the important problem of the modern and contemporary times is that we do not have a crucial role in the aspects of governance when it comes to the city. So how could ordinary citizens also be part of the governance of the city, especially in decision making about what kind of places they want to be? The public sphere in that way has to be activated. It has to be filled with dialogues about the aesthetics of the city, the ecology of the city, the culture, history, memory, culinary practices, sports culture, literary culture, archives of the city, even memorializations, because every city selects its official memory, its official monuments, and that also means it excludes many monuments, it excludes many memories from its official domain. So artists also have been throughout globally trying to create alternative spaces for different memorializations, different cultural expressions that have been marginalized, that have not been represented by the city. And in this project, what we have also done is we have tried to assemble different forms of engaging with city and researching with the city. I'm not using the phrase researching on the city or researching on the subjects of the city, because it showcases a hierarchical position that we know with the knowledge and we are doing some kind of clinical trial on the city. Whereas what we have to do is to work with the city, research with the city, and engage with the city. So that is what we see here in the works of Vasudha Tharoor, who is a contemporary artist, pedagogue, and has taught at Shivnala University for many years, one of the founding faculties of the place, where she has mobilized few important things. One is the importance of drawing as research, where how could one document public spaces, even when one is navigating to understand the emotional landscape of the city. How could one document it through the detailed process, the time-taking process of drawing, compared to the instantaneity of photography that you click and move on? From that, how could you document the various facets, the various emotional responses to the city? And she has also looked at the built spaces of the city, the lived spaces of the city, navigating also through her childhood memories of the space where she has grown up in this place, and also revisiting this place after many years. What kind of emotional response does it create in the mind? So So for me, the project is about revisiting the place, but with a renewed perspective of being a contemporary artist, and also a renewed perspective of being an artist researcher, applying different methods or applying innovative methods inspired by psychogeography, inspired by the practice of drawing and painting to engage with the city. And similarly, when we come to the works of Shumantro Sengupta, who is also a professor, who was also a professor at the Shivnada University, a founding faculty of the Shivnada University, who was engaged with these expressionistic, detailed paintings that has been achieved in a detailed manner here, sitting on it, contemplating on it, and creating these spaces that are also filled with certain kind of void, certain kind of absence. That is the absence of the space, that is the absence of certain things that are missing, that are lost now, and it's not easy to make sense of that. So here we see that. And one of the important concerns for me in Shumantro's practice is also about the culture of protest, the expression of resilience, resistance against the dominant forms of governance, and how to challenge that, how to question that. And throughout his practice also in this research, he has tried to attain that through engaging with the specific location of the Alipur jail, where many important revolutionaries and freedom fighters were jailed. And the city carries itself a very vibrant movement of political resistance, political protest. The social fabric of the city, the political fabric of the city is governed and conditioned by these social movements and political protests. And in Shumantro's practice, we see a lamenting about the absence of such protest, the absence of such resistance, the absence of such dissent. And Shumantro is here with me, and we could discuss more about that. About the absence of protest which you talk about.
It's not really absence of protest. It is a. It is the kind of drawing you can see here. It is first started with landscapes and the expansiveness of the space. Now, in that space, what he's talking about, the resistance of certain kind of things, is there through drawing. It is a very mindful thinking, what I'm doing. It is not expressionism, just karte ja raha hu and things like that. It is a very mindful thinking, and so in that sense, it is a resistance, no doubt about it. But it has also have got different way to see this is my work. That is
similar to Shumantro's work. This is the work, an outcome of the work done by Leaf Work. They are an artist collective from Switzerland and Belgium. Niels Peppen and Roman Lutherbacher. They had visited Calcutta and stayed here for 1 month. And their attempt was to revive the Adda culture, which is very popular in Kolkata and has been an important catalyst in forming public opinions in the public sphere. So what they did was they hosted during their residency an Adda, which was called as the Public Content Bureau, where they hosted an Adda in the public space and invited passerbys to come in, join, and discuss with them. And after each discussion every day, they painted the gist of the conversation here. So you can see various layers, various texts that are appearing over one after the other, not erased but overwritten, because showing the extension of the conversation they had. So this was a way to document the public's desire, the public's problems, public's aspirations. So this is Leafworks' work. And here what we see is Shivda Sengupta's project that deals with the unique event, the important iconic event of the shift of capital that happened in the 1911, which is part of the colonial history of Kolkata, but also is very much related to the modern history of India. The shift of capital is not only about the shift of capital of Calcutta, but it is also about the formation of Delhi as a capital. So the ramifications of an event in one place and how it also affects the important events in another part of the country itself is something we have to think of. But what Shivdas has also assembled in the text, which you see here in this drapery form, embroidered onto these words, is the events or the micro events, if we can call, which are not usually recorded in the official transcripts, are how the city responded to it, how the city experienced this shift before it and after it, which is not part of the official memory, which is not discussed. And I think this is also related to partition of India itself, partition of Bengal also, if you look at it, like what happened to people after that, how they responded to it, how they reacted to this partition, what was their emotional response to it. So Shivdas has collected such experiences, micro experiences of people, and has assembled those texts here. But Shivdas here is here with me, and would you like to talk more?
No, precisely what you also have mentioned in this body of work, what I was really interested in working with is the act of rewriting as also an artistic strategy through which, I can navigate a space for association to understand the larger event of 1911 in its totality. And that was something which was the core of the research through which I really wanted to engage with this kind of different histories, but then can those different histories also be heard together? And that was the basic idea through which I kind of developed this body of work as part of this residency program.
So when we are also talking about the colonial history, it's also important how the colonial history made its presence, entered into Calcutta, and also how it also moved around, navigated. So when we are talking about city, its architecture, its history, memories, monuments and everything, it's also important to look at the water bodies that played a crucial role in the history of Calcutta. Atul Phalla is a contemporary artist who has worked extensively on water, its ritualistic, ecological importance in Indian life and also in different parts of the world. Here again, Atul has engaged with the city through its water bodies, looking at the Hooghly River and also going to Sundarbans, and then further engaging with the estuary where the sea connects with the river, engaging with Sundarbans, the precarious lives of people they are leading because of the ecological devastation, and also the boat making community that lives nearby in that place, where also connecting it with the navigational technologies of boating that existed, that was, according to him, that was much more superior to what was getting made in Europe at that time. But such boat makers and their practice was also oppressed and suppressed because the European products have to be sold. So they kind of got into a marginalized position in their craft. And Atul's exchange also started with looking at the literary archive and exchange which his father had with a Bengali publisher and poet here. So he engaged with that too. So there were the different entry points for him through literature, through colonial history, through water bodies, through navigation technologies. So he also then entered into the city but also moved into another domain, another temporality through that. We are here with the video work of Parvez, an artist who is based in Basel, conceptual and performance artist who also came and visited the residency and stayed for 1 month. During his residency, Parvez looked at the life of the working class and the laborers of the city, and his specific focus was on the Bara Bazaar. And here in this video, you can see that he is actually following one particular laborer and looking at his life throughout the day, his eating practices, and the kind of weight the laboring body carries in the city of Calcutta to survive the economy and the commodity production of the city. And here is the kind of a collage which he has created, also asking various questions. And for me, this question is very important: that where do the weight bearers vanish when work ends? And through these various images, collage, text, one is he is documenting the laboring body, the lives of the laboring body. We usually ignore, we usually undermine their presence, but we exploit the labor class of the city, the working class of the city. And that was Parvez's attempt, where he also tried to live the life, not in the sense of like following it exactly, but understanding what kind of food habits they follow, what kind of burdens they carry, weight they carry, in what locations they operate, how much they have to move every day. And he presented almost the laboring body, the life of the laboring body, which is the least discussed part, even in the building of the city, the foundation of modern Calcutta. That is what we have. And the next section we have the works of Shalina Vichitra, who is an artist based out of Delhi, and she also visited the city as part of her research, extensively looked at the architectural history. So not only in terms of built spaces, but also the lived spaces of what kind of experiences these places carry, and what kind of discourses these places created, and what is the existence of this place right now. What are these lived spaces right now? The questions of preservation, the question of conservation, because these are also considered as heritage sites, heritage buildings. Who takes care of them? What city owes to these places? And in her research, which you can see, like there are various interesting findings she had looked at, and most importantly for me is the aspect of unitary urbanism, which situation is called. The urban spaces that have a long historical presence is the layering of different epochs, different time periods, and the layering that these epochs leave on the architectural structures of the city, whether it is modern, and even within modern itself is not a homogeneous phenomena. Even within modern, there are different aesthetic movements, architectural movements that influence the architectural practices. And also the colonial influence before that, the modern influence, the contemporary influence, the pre-colonial influence on these buildings. What does this mean? What kind of experiences this layering creates on all these architectural surfaces and the people who inhabit these spaces? So Shalina is here with us, and she will also talk about her work and research.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so interestingly, I was wanting to explore the idea of how various socio-political events, influences have affected the spaces that people have inhabited, and various influences like the colonial, the French, and also a lot of vernacular styles overlapping, the coexisting architectural styles which overlapped. And interestingly, there were these two areas overlapping, coexisting in a lot of buildings. A lot of inhabitants had also evolved into like more newer contemporary styles and changed the way they address their space. So they shifted from larger, more public spaces to more private homes, and also a lot of professions determine the kind of space they used, how they interacted with spaces. So like traders who moved in during the colonial period, interestingly lived in one-room apartments because they came for work, they left their families behind, and again, political events like the permanent settlement, for example, took away, land from most of the landlords. And then that's how, they were jobless, workless in villages around, areas around Kolkata. And here this was like a thriving port city with so much trade happening. And then we see, this migration of a lot of men who came in, for trade and in search of work. So a lot of political events again caused these cultural mixes as well, because we had the Marwari community coming, the Parsi communities coming, and then how they all had a way to engage with their space. And also similarly, the freedom struggle. There was another kind of hostel mess system where we had intellectuals, sharing a common space again, where there were discourses, discussions, the freedom struggle kind of snowballed out of there. So it was interesting to see how all these things coexist, and so many of these influences are influencing, the way people are addressing their dwellings. So and because also it wasn't independent of a previous experience or a previous layer or the history, is what I attempted to incorporate in my works. And I've used shadow images with some pin perforations of old maps of Kolkata, where there are suggestions of the river and it being like a clustered port city, and it kind of gives that historical layer, and it gives a spatial context to the project. And I've also used these fragmented forms from the various styles in very translucent and transparent layers, also again reinforcing the idea that there are translucent layers which are overlapping these dwellings.
So, Shalina just described about the layering, the complex nature of the urban spaces, the weight of history they carry, the weight of memory, the weight of...
It is, so evident, I would say, in the city of Kolkata, because even the modern and the contemporary spaces now just carry so much of the weight, and I shouldn't call baggage because it kind of seems like a negative word, but it does carry that. So if you look at this really now elite area like the Hindustan Park, with so many of these cafes and these boutique stores have sprung up, they're again so rooted into that whole context of that colonial history and the past, and so in that sense, you just can't take that out of the city. You just can't take that out of the architecture here, the spaces there. It's just interesting to see the shift in the spaces, just to see how the elements have been incorporated. For example, I had visited this very old building in North Kolkata, where there are the family still staying there. Beautiful house with the typical Thakur Dalan and a large courtyard with this public space. The elderly of the family sitting there in the courtyard. Women coming, greeting, going to the respective rooms. So that entire area was open to outsiders, public. When they have the Durga Puja, people come to see the idol. And I was just talking, and there were like 30, of the next generation, 30 of them had inherited that whole property. And they were all, living either abroad or in South Kolkata, but, visiting, not letting go of that past history, but how the spaces had changed because they had kind of made divisions in that large space. And some of them have moved to more private spaces. And obviously, many of them are now professionals, maybe lawyers, doctors, and they needed a different kind of interaction with their space. And then you see the development of these plinth-like structures outside those homes, where men could sit, like it's called the rock, and a lot of these homes then added that as an element outside the house where the men could interact with people because they didn't want anybody intruding into their private space. So very interesting observations as to how the society goes through a change. There's so much more intellectualism now, and then that is affecting the physical space that they inhabit. So that was an interesting, observation, which I quite enjoyed.
So from build spaces, we also entered into a very important discussion pertaining to our time, that is ecology. But ecology also in terms of urbanism. What are the lives of gardens? How are gardens designed when a city is planned? What is the unique position of these gardens? What is the unique position of wilderness in terms of city? What are the kind of ecosystems that nurture the city? And beyond the discourse of pollution or environmental degradation or ecological pollution, we also need to understand the complexity of how the city has a symbiotic relation with the ecology. And beyond exploring cities on ecological life, one also has to connect it with the planetary scale at the level of planet, at the level of its origins. And that one can see in this project that started by Radhika Agarwala, who is also based, she's also from Kolkata, but now she's also based out of Goa for some time. And throughout her practice, she's also interested in this mapping of the ecological ecosystem in the urban spaces, and the recent practice has also shifted and also aligned with this, engaging it with water and water systems and the importance of water in our lives. Here, Radhika has engaged with a project that looks at the lives of algae and mosses, the early lives that existed in human history and still continue to have a resilient presence in human history and urban dwellings. So she had collected various algae and mosses, created the live sculptures apart from the photographic documentation or the photographic interpretation that we see here, in order to present the various possibilities these micro lives give us, in order to deal with environmental pollution, atmospheric pollution, and providing them as alternatives to many ecological issues that we face. And what I also find fascinating is the presence of a unique and innovative language of art that is presented in this exhibition, which is the presence of a live sculpture here that you can see that is thriving with moss and this plant created in this microsystem. And here also you can see the Spanish moss that is hanging down. The various live sculptures like that, which she has also incorporated into this space to show us the wide variety of lives that lead a symbiotic relation with the ecosystems and also with us or the ecosystems around us. So one thing which I was discussing right now was that as much as it is a project about the ecosystem of Calcutta, it is also a project that extends to a planetary scale, looking at the early history, the origins of moss, algae, and going back in time. That has a continued presence throughout the planet's history, not only human history. So I was very fascinated with this extension from the city-based ecosystem to a planetary ecosystem and the relevance of this. Would you like to also talk about, I've talked about some of the live sculptures and everything, but would you also like to talk about the process and what you have done here?
Sure, I think one of the main aspects I want to talk about this show in terms of my inspiration and the image making, which was a very different style of image making for me. I think for me the idea of empathy, healing and caring became very evident, especially in a time when we are fighting different ecological wars in our society, irrespective of Kolkata or any other state or landscape we are living in. So I think that aspect I wanted to bring out in this work. So while I was doing my research and I started collecting and growing these specimens of moss, and also I started photographing these monuments. I was almost compelled to create this miniature museum as a living fossil, which talks about the current ecosystems that can help us to restore the balance, as Premjish is saying. I think the history of mosses go beyond human scale or geographical scale. They are the first living organisms on Earth to emerge. So I think for me that was extremely fascinating. And as an artist, I work with different media. So for me it was and sculpture primarily. So it was very important for me to show these living, to almost take a piece of history from my city into a white cube space and try to make sense of not just ecology but how we relate to the environment today within that white cube space. Because I think our understanding, our relationship with nature is becoming more and more artificial in the current times, even though it should be opposite at the moment. So I think for me it was very important to bring about those nuances in the practice, and also to challenge our perception and human perception in general, how we understand contemporary art, and can contemporary art really have solutions to tackle air pollution and different other ecological wars.